The concept of the enemy within is one that resonates deeply with many of us. While we may face challenges from external forces, pressures from work, relationships, or society, there is often a much more subtle and persistent battle happening inside of us. This inner enemy may be a combination of our fears, doubts, insecurities, negative self-talk, or any other thought pattern that hinders our growth and keeps us from achieving true inner peace. Today, we're going to explore how to identify, confront, and ultimately overcome this inner enemy. The first step in defeating the enemy within is understanding what it actually is. The enemy within refers to the parts of ourselves that create limitations or bring us down, often in ways we don't immediately recognize. It could be a critical inner voice that constantly points out our shortcomings, or it could be an old belief that says, "I'm not good enough," or "I don't deserve success." For many of us, this inner enemy starts to form from a young age, shaped by experiences, traumas, or even comments from others that left a lasting mark. Over time, these negative thoughts and beliefs become ingrained, and we start to believe them as truths. They become part of our inner dialogue, influencing our actions, our goals, and ultimately our sense of self-worth. To recognize the enemy within, we need to become more aware of our own thoughts and emotional responses. Often, this inner enemy hides behind seemingly harmless thoughts that disguise themselves as realism or caution, but they are in fact based on fear or insecurity. For example, the thought "I'm just being realistic" might actually be a cover for self-doubt, holding us back from pursuing what we truly want. Similarly, when we tell ourselves, "I'm just not good at this," or "people like me don't succeed," we're letting the inner enemy shape our identity in ways that don't reflect our true potential. One way to become more aware of these limiting thoughts is to pay attention to how you talk to yourself, especially in moments of challenge or failure. Notice the language you use. Do you tend to be harsh and self-critical, or do you show yourself compassion and understanding? Self-criticism is one of the main ways the inner enemy operates, often manifesting as a constant stream of negative self-talk that diminishes our confidence. When we're constantly telling ourselves that we're not good enough, or that we'll fail before we even start, it's difficult to find the motivation and courage to move forward. The inner enemy thrives on this self-criticism because it keeps us stuck in a cycle of low self-worth and self-doubt. Another way the inner enemy operates is by keeping us in our comfort zone, using fear to keep us from trying new things or taking risks. It whispers that we'll be embarrassed if we fail, or that we'll be rejected if we put ourselves out there. This fear-based thinking limits us, preventing us from exploring our full potential. It keeps us in familiar territory, where there is little room for growth or discovery. By clinging to this comfort zone, we end up missing out on opportunities and experiences that could lead to personal and professional development. The inner enemy convinces us that safety is more important than growth, but in reality, staying stagnant only reinforces feelings of dissatisfaction and regret. Once we understand how the inner enemy operates, we can begin the process of confronting it. This requires a combination of self-awareness, self-compassion, and intentional effort. Self-awareness is about paying attention to our thoughts and feelings without judgment. It's about recognizing the presence of the inner enemy and acknowledging how it influences our behavior. This can be difficult, especially if we've been operating under its influence for a long time, but awareness is the first step toward change. Self-compassion is equally important in this process. When we confront the inner enemy, we're likely to feel a mix of emotions, including guilt, regret, or even frustration. But instead of criticizing ourselves for having these thoughts, we need to approach ourselves with kindness and understanding. This inner enemy is a part of us, but it doesn't define us. By showing ourselves compassion, we create a safe space to work through these challenges and begin to heal the wounds that created the enemy in the first place. A helpful exercise in confronting the inner enemy is reframing negative thoughts. Whenever a limiting belief or negative thought arises, try to replace it with a more empowering or realistic one. For instance, if you think, "I'm going to fail at this," you might reframe it to say, "This may be challenging, but I can give it my best effort." Over time, Reframing trains your mind to think in more constructive and supportive ways. It weakens the inner enemy's hold by breaking the habit of negative self-talk and replacing it with a habit of encouragement and resilience. Another effective method in defeating the enemy within is practicing mindfulness. Mindfulness allows us to observe our thoughts and feelings without reacting to them. It helps us see the inner enemy for what it is, a pattern of thoughts that we have the power to change. Through mindfulness practices like meditation, we can learn to separate ourselves from the thoughts and emotions that try to control us. Instead of getting swept up in a wave of self-doubt or fear, mindfulness teaches us to step back, take a breath, and see things more clearly. We realize that just because we have a thought doesn't mean we have to believe it or act on it. Setting realistic goals and celebrating small victories can also help us overcome the inner enemy. The inner enemy often thrives on overwhelming us with unrealistic expectations or discouraging us with feelings of inadequacy. By setting manageable goals, we create opportunities for success that build our confidence and weaken the inner enemy's influence. Each time we accomplish a goal, no matter how small, we reinforce the belief that we are capable and worthy. This positive reinforcement is crucial because it gradually shifts our mindset away from self-doubt and toward self-assurance. Over time, these small victories add up, creating a solid foundation of self-confidence that the inner enemy cannot easily shake. Seeking support from others is another powerful tool in this journey. Often, the inner enemy convinces us that we're alone in our struggles, making it difficult to reach out for help. But sharing our challenges with trusted friends, family members, or mentors can provide valuable perspective and encouragement. When others show us understanding and support, it helps us realize that we're not defined by our inner struggles. Support from others also reminds us that we don't have to face our challenges alone, which can provide the motivation and strength we need to keep going. Journaling can be a particularly effective tool for working through inner struggles. Writing down our thoughts allows us to examine them more objectively and identify patterns. By putting our thoughts on paper, we can see the irrational or exaggerated nature of the inner enemy's messages. Journaling also provides a safe space for us to process our emotions, reflect on our progress, and celebrate our victories. Over time, this practice can help us create a healthier inner dialogue, one that encourages growth rather than hindering it. Overcoming the enemy within is not a one-time event but an ongoing process. We may find that even after making progress, the inner enemy reappears during times of stress or uncertainty. This is natural, as the inner enemy is often rooted in long-standing thought patterns that take time to fully reshape. However, each time we confront it, we become stronger and more resilient. We learn to recognize the pattern sooner, and we're able to counter them with confidence and clarity. As we continue this journey, we begin to experience the benefits of living with a peaceful and supportive inner dialogue. We become more confident, more resilient, and more willing to pursue our dreams and goals. We stop being held back by fear and self-doubt, and instead, we start living in alignment with our true potential. This newfound freedom opens doors to opportunities and experiences that we once believed were out of reach. In defeating the enemy within, we ultimately create space for a more authentic and fulfilling life. By transforming the way we think about ourselves, we also transform the way we experience the world around us. We move through life with a sense of purpose, unburdened by self-imposed limitations. We're no longer at the mercy of negative thoughts or old beliefs that once kept us stuck. The journey to overcome the inner enemy is not an easy one, but the rewards are worth every effort. By cultivating self-awareness, practicing self-compassion, and actively challenging limiting beliefs, we can break free from the chains of self-doubt and fear. We can replace the inner enemy with a powerful ally, a supportive and empowering inner voice that encourages us to become the best versions of ourselves. And in doing so, we unlock a life filled with purpose, joy, and unshakable peace. This is the freedom that awaits us when we defeat the enemy within.